I really saw what happened. I was in the car, and he was like, as they say, like the color drained out of his face because he was shocked. He said, how were you in that car? And of course they took him to the hospital. My friend got arrested, DUI. But before he put us in the ambulance, he was a man of God, because he looked at me and he told me, he said, young man, you better realize that you're on this earth tonight for a purpose. The only reason you're still alive is that God has a purpose for you. If not, you don't live through things like that. People without purpose, if you didn't have a purpose, then this night would have been your night. So you need to realize that. I said, this old man's out of his mind. If God has been looking for me, he had the opportunity to get me a long time ago, so don't tell me about that God stuff now. So I paid it no attention, and about a month later, 3-4 weeks later, my friend and I, same two, he's on crutches still, we decided to go to New York City. We decided to just take off, drive to New York City. We didn't tell our parents where we were going. I said I was sleeping in his house. He said he was sleeping in my house for the weekend. So we drove to New York. And in New York, I remember going to the ATM to get some money. And in New York, they have these ATMs where you have to go in a little glass room to get your money at ATM. I don't know if they have that here or if any of you have been to New York. Now, alhamdulillah, you have to put your bank card in to go in there. But in '97, it was not like this. You went in, and it was almost like the game Mousetrap, because you go in, take out your money, criminal comes right in behind you. There's nowhere for you to go. There's nowhere to run. So I went in, I took my money out of the ATM, and I heard the door open behind me. So I turned around. I thought somebody was coming in behind me, and there was a man who put a gun to my face. And he must have really, 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 really needed this money, because he didn't ask me anything. He didn't say a single word. I just remember looking at the gun in my face and him pulling the trigger. And it was a revolver. And to this day, I'll never forget that image in my head of seeing that little spindle turn and hearing that very distinct click of a revolver. And it probably could have been like a .32 snub-nosed gun like this, but when it was in my face, it looked like one of those like cannons that you see on the movies. And I remember when he pulled the trigger, I didn't think anything. You don't think anything. You just blank. You just go into this like shock of blankness. And then a couple seconds later, thankfully I had been doing martial arts. That might have helped me overcome the fight or flight syndrome, because all I could think was, go! Like myself kicking myself, like, what are you doing? Go! So I bum rushed him. We went flying. He went flying. Money went flying. Gun went flying. And I took off and went to the hotel and didn't say anything to anybody. We went back to South Carolina the next day. And I didn't say anything because we weren't supposed to be in New York. My grandfather would have killed me. If that guy didn't kill me, my grandfather would have took care of it. So I didn't say anything until about a month or two later. I kept having nightmares about this same incident. I kept having night terrors from this incident. And so I told my grandmother about it. And she told me the same thing that the officer had told me. She said, you have to realize that God has a purpose for your life. You're here for a reason. People don't go through the things that you've been through and still walking on this earth without a reason, and you're pushing the limit. This is what she told me. You're pushing the limit, really. God has something for you, and he wants you to get it, but you're pushing it. And she didn't tell me to go back to Christianity and study my Bible. The only thing she told me was that God hasn't gone anywhere. You just have not looked in the right place yet. And so I decided to put myself back together. The car wreck, the gun thing, the getting arrested for fighting, like all of that, like really made me stop really quick and think, that I need to get my stuff together. So I became an agnostic, someone who I believed in God with no form of religion. I prayed to God on the floor on my hands and knees, because this is how all the books of God, this is how the Bible, the Torah, the New Testament, the Bhagavad Gita, all of these scriptures that I ever read, they said that this is how the men of God prayed. And it was during this time that I did read one book about Islam in the public library, because I had never heard of Islam ever. But I remember I was looking in the religious section in the library at school, and there was a book about Islam, and or it was in the library, the public library, and I remember it was some title like "Why I'm Not a Muslim," or some, one of these titles that was propagandistic against Islam, but I had no idea. So I just took the book and I read it, and I remember it said that Muslims, M-O-S-L-E-M-S, and any of you knowing Arabic knows that's a very derogatory word. A Muslim is someone who oppresses someone else. That's a very quick sleight of the pen that was used in the past for a very real purpose. It said that Muslims were people who worshipped a moon god named Allah, who lived in a box in the desert in Saudi Arabia, and they were oppressive to women. I remember there's a whole chapter about how they could have 4 wives and as many as they want actually, because they could marry 2, divorce 1, get 3 more. You know, this whole, you know. And it said that, you know, I remember the one thing that really caught my attention was the whole chapter on jihad, where it said that Muslims were allowed to kill non-Muslims at any time, at any place, without discretion, and it was an honorable act, and not only would they go to heaven for it, but they would get 70 virgins on the way. You know, so I closed the book on Islam, put it back on the shelf, and marked off Islam off my little list of religions, and said thanks but no thanks, and if I ever see a Muslim, I am out. And I said I'm pretty safe in Greenville, South Carolina. I had never seen a Muslim ever. So I said, you know, I don't have to worry about running into no Muslims, thank God. So, you know, I started, you know, just worshiping. You know, I tried to just be a good person. You know, pray to God, ask Him for guidance, try to be a genuinely good person. And I remember what changed is when I met a Muslim. I met a Muslim who I had met a couple of times at school. We had went to school together, and I knew him, but I never knew that he was Muslim. And there's a couple of reasons why I never knew he was Muslim. Because he was an African American, number one, and the book said that Muslims were Arabs. And number two, I didn't know, you know, I thought Muslims ran around, you know, marrying as many women as they want and killing non-Muslims. I didn't know that they could also be part-time drug dealers. So I didn't know, I never knew that this guy was Muslim. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. So we were at his house one day, and me and my other friend, the one that, you know, I got into a lot of trouble with, I'm trying to keep him out of trouble now. We were at his house, and we were debating something about religion. I forget what even the topic was, but, you know, you had 2 teenagers thinking they know everything. And I was trying to explain something to him about the Bible. And that guy came in and was listening. He said, have you ever heard of Islam? I said, yes, I've heard all about Islam. He was like, okay, so what do you think of it? I said, what do you mean what I think of it? That's probably the worst religion I've ever seen on the face of the planet. He's like, why? And he's like, but I'm a Muslim. I was like, man, stop playing. You know, like, you're an African American. You know, he's like, so? I'm like, the book said you guys were Arab. All the Muslims were Arabs. He was like, what else did you read in the book? And I told him. He was like, man, what in the, you know, what have you been reading? He's like, you need to go to the mosque for Jummah. He's like, he told me, he said, I'm not a good Muslim. This is what he said to me. He said, I'm not a good Muslim. I'm not even going to try to front and say I'm a good Muslim. He said, but I can guide you to some people that can tell you the real truth about Islam, because he knew about my story about wanting to find religion. And he said, you need to go to the mosque for Jummah. And I said, what's Jummah? He said, it's just like church with no chairs. And I said, I can do church with no chairs because in church the chairs were the worst part anyway. Because they had these hard benches that you sit on that are like this, and they're so hard. I said, that's good. You sit on carpet? Wow, man, every church should be like that. And I said, where's the mosque? He said, it's on Wade-Hampton Boulevard. I said, where on Wade-Hampton Boulevard? I lived on Wade-Hampton Boulevard. I lived right off of Wade-Hampton Boulevard. He said, you know where Lee Road intersects with Wade-Hampton? I said, yeah, I lived on the other side of the intersection. He said, it's right there. I said, no, it's not. There's nothing. There's a gas station and a church. He said, yeah, you know that church, the Evangelical Missionary Training Facility? I said, yeah, I used to take missionary classes there. He said, you know that building in the parking lot with the gold thing on top? I said, yeah, the gym? And he was like, no, that's the mosque. Because I had always thought it was the gym because it was in the same parking lot and it was just rectangular with 2 glass doors in the front, and you could literally walk in between the church and the masjid and touch them like this. Anyone doesn't believe me, go to Greenville, South Carolina, look at the masjid. You can almost touch both of them just like this. He said, yeah, it's right there. I said, I've never, you know, at first I was shocked, like I've been living across the street from all these crazy Muslims all my life. You know, I said, I never knew. you know, and he told me to go to Juma, and I asked him what time. He said he would meet me there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. So I said, okay. I went on Friday, and I'm waiting outside for him. You know, I'm not going inside. That's not happening. You know, and I'm seeing all these people going in, and at this time, it was a predominantly Indo-Paki Arab masjid. Anyone who went in was not American, period. And I did not see even one African American going there. And I did see one, and then when he went in, I heard him talking in a dialect that I realized he was probably from Africa. So I said, he's not American. So I'm not going. I'm waiting, and I'm standing outside, sitting on the church steps, and the imam pulls up and parks right in front of me, who I had no idea he was the imam. But he got out, and he asked me, you know, am I waiting for someone, this, that, and the other? And I explained to him. He said, oh, yeah, we know this brother. You don't see him that much, but we know who he is. You know, he said, I'm glad you came. You know, he was a very, very nice, gentle young man. And he invited me into the mosque, and I kind of wanted to wait on my friend, you know, but I didn't want, you know, at the same time, I didn't want to tell his man I don't want to go in. So I went in, and they put me in the back and gave me a chair anyway. I said, I came to sit on the floor. They gave me a chair anyway, you know, and all of these people are piled up in front of me, and there's no Americans here, and I'm starting to wonder, you know, if this is a setup, because it's starting to smell like a setup to me, because in my mind, I'm like, you've been set up before, and this seems kind of like this. So, and I'm starting to think in my head, you know, scenarios, you know, a young mind at play. You know, I said, this other guy, my friend, he probably was in the same situation like me, and he probably made a deal with them to get out as long as he brought other Americans and tricked them into coming to the mosque so they could do their jihad after Juma and get their 70 virgins. So I'm sitting here, and there's all these people in front of me, and then there's a curtain with all these people behind me making noise, and I have no idea who's back here. So I'm stuck in the middle of this. I hear that it's some women, but I don't, you know, there's a curtain. I have no idea. I'm like, there's something very odd about what's going on right here. I'm like, just let me make it. I'm starting to look for the exit. I'm like, you know, calculating how many people are between me and the exit. You know, I know some martial arts, so I said I might hit a couple of them, and I'm out. And then the imam came, and I just now realized that he was the imam because he got up on the minbar, you know, and they started to call the adhan. And, you know, I said, okay, that man seemed nice. He seemed genuinely nice, so I felt a little more comfort. And then he got up after the adhan, and he started his khutbah. Inna alhamdulillah nahmaruhu wa la. I said, oh my God. I said, I bet you he's talking about me. You know, and he's being forceful. You know, he was getting loud and banging on the minbar, and he's pointing in my direction. You know, I'm like, oh man, I gotta get out of here really quick, you know. I said, well, I'm going to take my chance with the women behind me. I'm going through the curtain. And then he started to, when he got done with his Arabic tirade, he started to explain it. You know, that verily all praise belongs to Allah alone, or God alone. In Him do we worship, in Him do we seek help and assistance. We seek refuge with Him from the evil that life. You know, he explained what he said in Arabic, and it sounded to me so beautiful. It was very, very beautifully